judge
Very straightforward.
of
Yeah, and transparent.
was
Yeah.
positive
Yeah.
about
Which I actually like that better.
Okay, good.
They sounded really
You know where you
nice. Cheryl's got a very nice
stand.
voice.
Yeah.
They harmonized well.
Yeah. Yep.
But she was sort of startled that the drummer wanted to come out
He
and
came in the secret door.
He sure did.
What's up?
4 hours early.
Yeah, and of course, he wants to be there at 10 o'clock. And it's like, okay.
It does take him a long time to
I got the wrong one. Was she supposed to be here?
I guess
Here you go.
I don't know. That seems like a lot.
when you show up.
Good evening. This is a regular session of the Planning Commission, September 12, 2023. We'll start with our roll call.
All right, Stiles,
Here.
Greene,
Here.
Zaremski,
Here,
DeVore Leonard,
here.
Osterholm.
Here.
Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Meg Leatherman.
Great, thank you. Any changes to the agenda? Does anyone have? I have something I'm going to say under communication, since it's communication, but that's it. Okay, if not, then let's review the minutes. It's the minutes of the August 15th meeting. Does anyone have any changes? They're pretty short. If not, could we get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, then we will move on to our communications. Do we have any, Judy?
We do not.
No, okay. Then what I'm going to mention is just a sort of a refresher for all of us to remember as planning members, planning commission members, that when we're at this meeting, we're representing the planning commission. But when we are out in the public, we are not, unless we have been specifically appointed to be on a committee or asked to do something. So it's real important that if we're out in the community, that we don't say, oh, I'm a planning commission member, because you're not at that point representing the planning commission. And if it's something that involves the newspaper, and they're there, you might want to make sure that they know, I am not here representing planning commission, I'm just here as a private citizen. And enough said. Okay.
Okay,
then.
hold on.
Okay.
I will take note of that because what I did as a private citizen. I did not identify myself as a planning commission member. And if the paper chose to mention that I was, that's on them and not me.
I agree. I agree.
And
I
even
think
before,
that's,
I even went to a township meeting. I came down here and talked to our clerk to make sure I was ethically solid on what I was doing as a private citizen.
yes.
With that being conferred, I proceeded with what I was doing as a private citizen. I
And
just
I
want to
think-
clear that up.
And I think that's fine. And newspapers, although I know they try to print as much as they can, which is factual, there are some times that they don't get things. And different jobs I've had, when I would have quite a few things in the paper, I personally would just hope that they wouldn't have something that was so wrong, that was awful, because there would almost always be a little something. So I do understand that. I'm just wanting to clarify for all of us to know And I need a reminder, because a lot of times when you're someplace, people will say, oh, well, you're on the Planning Commission. And, but thank you, Scott, for clarifying that.
Well, not a problem.
Okay. So we will go on then to our council and committee reports. Active Transportation Committee, is there anything, Gary? No, okay. Council, Gavin?
Yes, I have a report that
Yay.
Judy has written. But for decorum purposes, I read it. Council approved retention of $205,000 in the Green Space Fund through 8/31/24 to cover TLT's one-year grant extension for the potential purchase of easements identified as being in the village's priority designation. Council will hear information from NIC regarding property maintenance and the potential for village government involvement in enforcing property maintenance issues. Burns presented the case for in-house tree trimming, including the hiring of 2 employees and the purchase of a bucket truck, arguing this would provide greater capacity at a lower cost within a 3-year period. Council verbally agreed to the idea and will further consider it during budgeting. And then traffic mitigation issues have been raised by citizens. Public Works and PD have responded actively with brush clearing, restriping, and replacement of signs where appropriate. Council continues to discuss the possibility of further action.
Great.
Those
thank
are the
you.
things.
Any questions for Gavin?
I should have added in speed enforcement because I left out what PD was doing, but they are doing speed enforcement.
Okay, thank you. And there is not a report from Housing Committee because they're not meeting again till November. Okay, we're at the place in our agenda where citizens' comments for anything that we're not having a public hearing. We are having one public hearing. So if anybody has something they want to talk about, please come forward, state your name, and talk. Is there anyone? Okay.
Hi, my name's Riley. I work for the Yellow Springs News. Riley Dixon.
Thank you.
That's right. That's right. Reprimanded previously. Now, I would never presume to tell anybody else how to do their job, and I certainly do not appreciate being told how to do mine. When a public official, a person on an appointed board, goes to interact with another publicly appointed official in any capacity, I would not be doing my job if I did not report the affiliations of either of those parties. So if a planning commission member, while interacting in any capacity with, say, a county commissioner on any matter, does as such, then I would not be doing my due diligence to not say that this person is affiliated with a publicly appointed body. So I have to say, I do not find the initial comments at the beginning of the meeting to be all that appropriate.
Okay.
I think it is entirely relevant that a planning commission member talks to a Greene County commissioner in any capacity.
I think the issue is we cannot represent the Planning Commission unless
Certainly.
we have been appointed to do that. And so we're here at this meeting and we're the Planning Commission. But when I go and if I choose to meet with a county commissioner about animal rights, it has nothing to do with the Planning Commission, nor can I present myself as being on the Planning Commission. And so you might say, put that in, but I think it would also be important that you say the person was there as a private citizen.
Certainly. But if my job is to provide as much context as I possibly can, then I will do just that.
Okay.
But if I may speak, but that's not the context of the particular case. I'm on Planning Commission too, and I assure you I intend to interact with various groups, with various factors, whether it's bike safety and this and that and the other thing, and I'm doing it as a private citizen. As a private citizen, I have the right to represent myself as a private citizen. Granted, I'm a member of a particular group, but once again, I'm not representing it. So it's in that context, it's immaterial what groups I'm a member of if I'm not representing it at a particular event.
I respectfully disagree. I think if infrastructure is changing in and around the village, if new stop signs are being erected, if a bike path is changing, hypothetically speaking, then I think if that is coming at the behest of a request from a private citizen and that individual is a part of an elected body in the village, then I think it is entirely within my purview to note that affiliation.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very
That
much
is all.
for your comments. Okay, any other citizens' comments? If not, then we will go to our first public hearing, which has to do with, we aren't going to do the hearing yet, but we're going to talk about the final plan application for PUD from the Massies Creek Ventures LLC.
And just before we start it, I have it listed under public hearing. We've noticed it as a public hearing in full transparency and kind of the way that we do things. There's actually not a public hearing requirement for the final plan for the PUD. This is the way that we're choosing to do it, but it is not a required step. I mean, it's not required that it be a public hearing.
Okay, Meg, would you like to talk about this?
Sure, thank you. All right, this is a final development plan application for the PUD development plans at 108 Cliff Street. I'm going to give a little bit of a summary of the past meetings it's had, because it's had quite a few, and then give my recommendation. At the May 9th Planning Commission meeting, a recommendation was made to approve the preliminary development plan and rezone to PUD. Then on July 3rd and July 17th, the preliminary development plan and rezone was approved by the Village Council. So the property is presently rezoned to PUD, hence why a hearing is not required, but we're doing one anyways. For tonight's meeting, adjoining property owners were notified, signs were posted on the property, and a notice was published in the paper. The zoning code requires that the Planning Commission review a final development plan at the last step to ensure that there has not been any changes since the preliminary approval, and to review the final development plan based on the standards from the code. I have prepared a staff report that lists each applicable standard and provides a staff finding of how the application satisfies each one. It's important to remember that the Planning Commission can only base their decision on these standards, and therefore all discussion should be related to the applicable standards outlined in the staff report. 1 week in advance of this meeting, the clerk provided a copy of the staff report to the Planning Commission and posted a link to the staff report on our website. Before we move forward with questions you may have of me on the proposal, I did want to make a couple clarifying comments. Within the staff report, there's a little bit of, one's an error, and one's just a clarification point. So I'm going to, if you want to pull out the report, I'll direct you to the page. So on page 2, under requested action, which is the full paragraph, I need to add a sentence that reads, the ADA ramp requires an agreement with the adjoining property owner, therefore is not a required improvement for this application. That same sentence needs to be embedded into, sorry, I'll pause there. Do you see where I mean? This, at the very end of this paragraph here.
We need to
add, yeah, this, I'll read it again. The ADA ramp requires an agreement with the adjoining property owner because it crosses to the property line. So basically, we're not going to hold up that improvement with this, other improvements associated with this approval, which are 2 sets of stairs and a bench to create access points to the green, I keep going like green belt, it's not, it's the trail, bike trail.
And who is the other property owner?
Actually, I'm not quite sure. Maybe when the applicant comes up, they can let us know. I haven't looked into it.
Okay.
And then there's the finding related to that same topic, the ADA ramp. It's on the bottom of page 4, beginning of page 5. And then just the same clarification that the ADA ramp is not a required improvement for this application. However, the applicant has stated, and probably will reiterate tonight, that they still plan to do that. It's just that these approvals, especially with specific site plan approvals, they have really tight timeframes, and we don't want to be holding up the project or cause any issues legally with the timeframes of the construction of the other improvements. And then on page 5 at the top, finding 8, this was the error, the clerical error. I will use the word bike storage, and it should be bike parking. There are actually bike storage units are covered typically, but so just to be, as a clarification, just to make sure it's known
Is that at the top of the page?
it is at the top of the page.
Mine says bike parking.
Oh, okay, the finding.
Oh, the finding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
finding 8.
I see, yeah.
And we can thank Gary for finding that. So it's helpful, though, because I do use these when they get through towards after they actually construct the improvements. I will go back to the report and make sure that they're in compliance with it before we do the final approval.
Okay.
All right, so I don't think, you'll see in my staff report that I give a recommendation of approval, and I don't think that these changes will modify that recommendation, so I'm still recommending approval tonight. And then I'll go ahead and stand for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Meg at this point?
What was changed from the preliminary?
Nothing, sorry, nothing was
Okay,
changed from the
all right.
preliminary to the final. It's exactly the same.
Okay.
All of a sudden, I have dry mouth. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, I can't get to my words out.
Anyone else have questions for Meg? Would we like to hear them from Drew? Is there something you have to say?
I'm speaking for Brian Drew,
Okay,
Dino Pallotta.
great.
I'm Board of Director for Massey Creek on this project.
Anything that you want to tell us?
I think we were talking about Yellow Springs Brewery with the adjacent, that's probably what we were speaking of.
Is that the actual owner, the Yellow Spring Brewery?
Well, no, that would be Allison Moody.
Okay.
because she
So
owns-
the Millworks?
Yep, Millworks.
Millworks,
Yep,
okay.
Millworks. So that's what that adjacent area is to do ADA compliance.
And that's the place in between where all that white stone is now?
There's Whitestone and there's the tree, the arborvitae.
Arborvitae,
in between
yeah.
there too, yeah.
Okay.
All in that area. So that's the area that we want to open up. And so it's compliant, so it's easier for access for, going back and forth on the PUD. And, as Meg said, the whole point of this PUD is really to enhance the lumberyard, enhance what it's going to bring, open it up to retail, but it's going to give us more flexibility as the project goes on, that it gives us the flexibility to bring in other, not just per se eateries, that we can open it up to retail. So that's the biggest flexibility, along with the PUD that's already in existence, what you also already added to the PUD. This is just a complete enhancement for the village. So it's a good fit for all of us, for Allison and that PUD there, and then everything else that's been brought into the PUD. So again, it's just going to bring, bring a solid foundation of what we want to bring to the village.
And so I think you're, from what was submitted, you're a little behind, because I think in it, you were hoping to start work this fall or so.
Sure.
So does that sort of put everything back a little bit?
Well, I think the PUD is a bigger factor here, which really was going to help us in gaining tenants or looking at other tenants. So that was the enhancement of this. So not that the project's delayed, that certainly is part of it, but this part of, once this PUD was developed and we were brought into it, it's better for us to do it this way.
And then if I'll add, there's a conditional use also that was previously approved. I think maybe that's what you're thinking about, the time frame that is kind of tied to this. And the conditional use is still required for them to do the market eatery. And we're tracking those timeframes, so they don't expire for a while. There is the potential that's available option for a one-year extension, even if they need to.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any retail in mind?
Retail has contacted us, but we've we've held up on the retail because this hasn't been approved
Yeah.
yet. So people have been in contact to do retail. So yeah, there is that ability. That's the good news of this, is that they're ready, they're lined up. But until you give us final approval, then we can start going to those tenants. Yeah.
Anyone have any other questions?
So basically, upon approval, how does this do with your time? Does it put you back on track?
This will put us, it gives us the flexibility now to go after the retail, to start lining up our tenants, redoing leases on those tenants and bringing them in so that we could now work our program, work our plan, and go forward with it. That's the whole idea behind this.
I have a question for us, with the, more with the code and PUD and whatever. Since there's been a couple questions with timing, is there anything that we've done on Planning Commission with approvals and all that stuff that all dictate any timing for them to be doing anything on this project?
Yes, they have a couple different time constraints. They're supposed
Okay.
to have it completed within, well, the conditional use is supposed to be completed within a year. And then this approval also has a year time frame, but they can be extended. And it's for all the improvements to be or it's either
Okay.
to have all the improvements constructed or to have commenced occupancy.
And that clock starts as of our final approval?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So at this point, there's nothing at all that's really has impacted them from a timing standpoint?
I don't know what you mean, sorry about that, like nothing
In
that's
terms of
impacted.
progressing on, proceeding with their project?
No, I don't think so. I mean, then maybe they
Okay.
could answer that. I don't think we've impacted them on their timeframes.
Okay.
but I've also only been here 3 months, so I don't know.
Blame it on Denise.
Yeah, I'll blame it on Denise.
He's
yeah.
not here.
Thanks, Gavin.
Good. Anything else?
Okay. If there aren't any other questions, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Then we're at the point, I guess we're not required to have a public hearing. There's a bunch of people here. So maybe we should go ahead and have a public hearing. Is that,
You certainly can.
okay? Okay, so we will open up a public hearing. Anybody who would like to say anything, please come forward and state your name.
Hello, Patrick Lake. I'm actually the founder of Massies Creek Ventures. I'm here just as a resident of Yellow Springs. I live right around the corner from the project site, particularly interested in the community impact that this project will bring, which is why I started the business. This project has been always about being by, for, and of Yellow Springs, to serve this community, to provide opportunities for this community. The tenant base that was curated for this community, largely minority-owned, largely Yellow Springs based, or people that came up in this community. I'm concerned that that will not be preserved moving forward. I want to make sure that that happens. And the other thing is I'd like to have some clarity. There's a lot of questions as a member of the company that I have, and just interested to know the direction the business is going. Dina talks about business is for sale. If it's for sale, who is coming in to complete with what? And this is the last hurdle to open the gates completely. And I've been interested in and very concerned about making sure that whatever comes through the gates on this project is appropriate and beneficial for Yellow Springs. So I'd like to get some clarity on that. Lastly, the times that I've appeared before this body as a representative of the company, when I used to be a manager for the business and speaking for it, which I no longer am, I was asked directly if the management was at all had a business affiliation with Dave Chappelle. Brian Drew resigned from the business he worked for me in September to take a job with Dave. I hope that this body has been appropriately notified of all of those things, because I think it impacts the direction of the business and the impact on the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if there's not anybody else, then we will close the public hearing. And We have before us the final plan application, the final development plan review. It has not changed. It meets all the requirements going through pages 3, 4, and 5, meets everything, and then the clarifications and change that Meg made. And so the staff does recommend approval. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
Great, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call then.
So if, more properly, so you're moving to approve the final plan
Development.
as presented.
Yes.
Final
Okay.
development plan, yeah.
Thank you very
So
much.
can I just ask a question before? Is this the appropriate time?
Yes, you can ask.
So just there's obviously stuff going on about what's happening with the ownership and whatever. Ultimately, as I understand it, what we're here to do is to look at, are these things allowed, essentially? And there's nothing about it that I've heard that, so what happens with the business side of things, as I understand it, we don't have any purview, any whatever. I'm just making sure we're on the same page. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so just
Yeah, very
everything else
specific,
about the
yeah.
project, everything still checks out.
It's very clear, like the law states that, yeah, we can only make a decision based on the applicable code, and that's what's outlined in the staff report, and does not talk about the business, status
Cool.
of the business.
Just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, roll
Ready?
call.
All right, Greene,
Yes.
DeVore Leonard,
Yes.
Osterholm,
Yes.
Zaremski,
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it's final approval. Okay, then, the last thing we have then is our old business, the goal review.
The fun stuff, you mean?
Yes, really fun stuff.
At least for me.
That
'cause
Meg
I'm
worked hard on.
a geek like that. All right. Anyone else? Okay. So at the last meeting, I provided basically another spreadsheet that outlined all of the 24 policies from the comprehensive plan, and then every single project that stems from that, which is about 54 of those projects. And I classified them as pending projects, active projects, or pending being not even started, active ones that staff was working on, and then some that we hadn't started at all. That was not right. Okay. But I think you know what I mean, what I meant. And so then the Planning Commission then highlighted each one, selected which one that they thought we should focus on over the upcoming year, because this was part of the discussion, was what should be the focus and the goals for the Planning Commission next year. And we were trying to align with the budget cycle as well, so that we could identify needs and then get in front of council to ask for potential funding if we needed it. And so I took all that information that I heard and then put it in a new spreadsheet as part of the staff report that I gave to you all and you all have in front of you tonight. We came up with 4, and I'll highlight those, from active and pending to continue, but we also added 2 new projects. So the 4 that we discussed that were pending that we want to highlight this next year was how to prepare a guide, a how-to guide for ADUs, review of the current zoning code to see how we can help focus on infill, make the zoning code easier for infill, basically, a property maintenance code or property maintenance considerations in general, establishing a community reinvestment area. And then 2 projects that we added were development of apartments and bike parking code amendment. So I also went back and looked at the active projects, because we didn't really talk too much about those at the last meeting. And I wanted to make sure that if there were any that were kind of at a point that still needed monitoring and would make sure that continued on, I added those to the spreadsheet as well. So this new spreadsheet in front of you represents, so the ones that you highlighted as wanting to continue, but also some of the active ones that I can continue to monitor. And I thought that I would use this, I'll use this as my kind of project tracker throughout the year and update it, and then in July come back and give you a status review of it. Then tonight, what I was hoping through the spreadsheet is I created like designated a project lead, as much as I could figure out in my head, and then a status, again, the status, what the deliverables would be and potential steps in reaching those deliverables, a deadline, and then some other notes. And then, like, a lot of these projects, I mean, some of them are really more like tasks and can be kind of a one-off thing, a few, or they're just construction specific. But then other ones could be really multifaceted and approached in different ways. And so I was hoping tonight that you could kind of give it a review, maybe give me some feedback on all three of the deliverables. If you think, and of course, maybe you might need to come back. Maybe you need to let me know some of this later, but at least give me your initial thoughts on the deliverables, the status, and the deadlines that I kind of proposed. Yeah, and so I guess I'll just...
Sorry, can you just help me understand, when you're saying the 3 deliverables, what are the 3 deliverables you're talking about?
I don't know. 3. Well, there were
4.
4.
The
There were
biking park code amendment, the develop the how-to guide for the residents for ADUs.
Oh, you mean the 4 that you guys?
Is that what you're talking about?
You each went through is what I was trying to say. Maybe I used the wrong number, I don't know. But you each went through and said what you thought would be a priority project for next year. And then there were also 2, well, I guess there was 1 added, because there was also 1, you added 1 from that discussion. But so I don't know what you mean by 3, but I guess.
You just said 3 at the end there, but it's okay, but then, so it sounds like maybe there's 4, so then what are the 4? Bike park, somebody said bike.
So how-to guide for ADUs.
The bike, though, the bike park code was the first one, then the how-to guide, then the review of the existing zoning requirements, and then the next one down, explore establishing a community reinvestment area.
And then the property maintenance code was 1. That I kind of broke out into meaning more of what I heard from you guys was basically clarifying our code enforcement process internally, and then also like coupling it with providing resources to those that might need it at the same time, so that we're not just going off and being like to every single person, fix your property, but those that are blatantly have the means to, maybe we would be a little bit more stern with, I guess not stern, but regulatory, but others that might need more assistance, a soft approach, I guess I would say. We'd have a soft approach to it, not necessarily black and white, and taking the whole picture and circumstances of the situation into consideration, which to me, in my opinion, requires like a detailed internal process, which I'm currently working on already anyways, and then me educating myself on what available resources there would be for that potential property owner.
So this is a really interesting question about this enforcement of things. So just for example, the rules about sidewalks, and not even whether they're broken up or not, but just whether they can overhang your sidewalks. You know, my wife and I walk around town a lot, and when people have let their hedges grow into the sidewalks, I mean, a lot of them are kind of just barely wide enough for 2 people anyhow, and then now you're walking in the street, or it's, and so my understanding is that if your hedges are growing into the sidewalks, nothing really will happen until somebody complains.
It's true, we are complaint driven. That is one aspect, yep.
And that's just, that, I don't know, I mean, obviously I can see why, but it does seem like it's sort of like let that fall as low as possible that, now, I don't know what else you would do, whether you have like the sidewalk police or,
Well,
it's a,
Last year, we did have, I wouldn't call this sidewalk police, but there was a group that went around, and then they would note where there were sidewalks blocked, because they were focused on sidewalks. They passed it on to Denise and her staff, and then they investigated it to see whether or not they really were violations, and they send out letters then to people, and because there are people in my neighborhood who have gotten letters. I got a letter last year, because I have this one plant, a prairie dock that was leaning way over the sidewalk, so we cut it back. This year, we've tied it back. I replanted a bunch of it, but I've tied it back so it doesn't, because a lot of people look forward to seeing this prairie dock.
So,
But anyway, they do send out letters, and I have people across the street who, their trees are hanging down. They've had to cut them.
Yeah.
there are two, I think there are two different conversations with regard to the property maintenance piece. One is the one that is gearing up to come before council, which would involve NIC, which is more likely to affect commercial properties, and any property which rents to, I think, more than 4 households is considered commercial. And then it would be a matter of passing an ordinance to be able to enforce, whether it's annual inspection, whether it's complaint-driven, whether that would all have to be worked out, but that's a safety-driven initiative, basically, and it wouldn't be, I'm calling because my neighbor's house is painting a disgusting color and her porch is falling down. It's not what that is about. And so this piece here, I think Planning Commission needs to make a decision. Is this a direction we want to go with residential people's houses, that we can complain about them and they can be looked into, or are we more interested in safety issues and kind of piggybacking with council on the more commercial property safety-oriented pieces of that puzzle? So, I mean, that's just a question for you, because those are two different
And
routes.
I think maybe now that I should have probably thought of this before, but maybe we could go through, like, kind of quickly, if we could, each one, like, we have organized thoughts about these, and I will say that I have the status, Gavin, kind of back to your question initially, I think. The status, I guess, the 4 don't really even matter. I guess that's why it wasn't even, or 3 wasn't registering in my head, because on this spreadsheet where it says pause and active, the ones that say active are the ones that I'm thinking we would continue to move forward this next year. So it's not just 4, it's more than that, or 3.
Before you,
but-
I guess you go on that, I guess I just want to comment on the property.
Okay.
I think that it ought to be safety-driven. I am not wanting to have us, I want us to give information for people who need to do repairs. But I don't want us to be policing them, because my concern is that you're going to have somebody, I don't want anything to happen that somebody might lose their home because we say this home has to be fixed. The safety, like sidewalk safety, I think that's a great thing, because we have people on wheelchairs going around town, we have a lot of walkers, we have an old community, a lot of, older folks, and so safety, I think is, but I think for property maintenance, the house itself, I would encourage us to provide information, is the way I see it.
I agree. On the other hand, we just become a glorified HOA. I mean, and I like private property the way private property is, but when it comes to safety issues, then I really agree with Susan. That's where maybe that would be a place we should be as a public body.
And then just a follow-up on that, like, in a proactive manner then, and not just be complaint-driven for
Yeah, I'd
safety
rather be
matters?
proactive if possible.
Proactive for safety items, and then
Correct.
complaint-driven for others, is kind of what I'm,
Well,
but go ahead.
yeah, but, what I was originally wanting to comment on, the talk about the sidewalks, it was a citizens group that started doing the surveying and all,
Yeah.
and then brought it to the village staff. But then there's a variety of things that, we deal with in the village that there might be various ordinances for, but they're all solely based on public reporting, and complaint-based. There's the sidewalks, I made a quick list. Noise ordinance, dogs barking, junk cars sitting in yards, and lawns that are overgrown, and, a lot of ragweed or whatever. And any of that, the village doesn't go out looking for these things. It's when someone comes to the staff and complains about something, if it violates an ordinance, then there's an action, and that's how.
Gary, you
any
know
of
that when
works.
your lawn is overgrown, that you just get one of those signs that say manage natural landscape.
Apparently, that doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, though, it seems. But then the safety stuff, some of this is nuanced in my mind.
It is.
And you can't just say,
That's
oh,
why you
safety
hire
stuff.
great staff,
Well,
right?
that's why NIC would be driving it. It's not,
Yeah.
NIC is the entity that would come back and say, here's what you
What's-
can do, here's what you can't do. So if you wanna
What's that
explain
entity?
NIC.
NIC is who we use for building permit review, and we're exploring, I think Judy and Johnny are exploring working with them for some type of code enforcement related to safety of buildings and structures. I don't know too much. Maybe you could elaborate.
Well, that's what hasn't yet come before council. That conversation's been broached with NIC. Can you prepare information for us about it so we can bring it to council to see if council's interested in potentially passing an ordinance? This is sort of in the wake of the whole, the fire and sort of some safety issues that were revealed with Hawthorne Apartments, and some demands that the village do more enforcement, which the village has no ordinance enabling them to do at this point. So that's where that came out of.
Well, what was the issue? I knew that I saw where the Hawthorne Apartments, part of it had burnt down. What was the issue there?
I don't know that I can comment on it,
Yeah,
because I don't know
All right, okay.
what's,
That's fine.
what information is which direction. I can say that there were certainly citizens demanding government action, and we realized we don't have the means to engage in that action presently.
Okay, why don't we go back to what Meg wanted to do
Yes.
and quickly go through these?
Okay, and I also grouped them by the chapter from the comprehensive plan, so we kind of know what context it's in. For the transportation chapter, it's a thoroughfare map I have on pause, which would be just kind of a clear, re-discussion of the classification of our street system. And I have that on pause. It hasn't been reached anyone's radar that I'm aware of. I haven't heard about it at the Planning Commission. The next one, too, is the Little Miami Scenic Trail to Young's Jersey Dairy Trail. This would be construction of one. I have that on pause. And then,
And I guess one of the things that, when Josue was here at the last meeting, he said that you all do submit, if money comes available, you go ahead and submit for it.
yeah.
Because I would not want us to stop that if there was money available.
That came in, all of a sudden it was specifically only going to be for this. Yeah, I mean, I did put it on here that we're going to consider it again in 2025, so this is just a pause for a year, trying to prioritize and figure out what we have the resources to do.
And so, just where would would the trail go up 68, or would it be?
Yeah, that was another
a connector,
complication.
like
Yeah.
on Jackson Road?
Yeah, that was a complication of it. It goes outside of our village limits into multiple different jurisdictions as well, which is one of the reasons it complicates it. It would just make have a lot more upfront work with other agencies and acquiring properties and that such. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine, deposit.
okay. New sidewalk from Polecat along Polecat from Yellow Springs Fairfield Road to Ellis Park, Fairfield Road to Ellis Park. And as an update for this one, Johnny, Public Works Director, is working on has submitted for a grant for a sidewalk on Fairfield Road from Ridgecrest to Winter that he said he should hear back from in January. But I have this one as active.
Sidewalks must be really expensive.
Yeah,
'Cause-
they are.
Well, and it
Millions.
crosses over, you need a bridge.
Oh, yeah, that one's the one that has the bridge, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think part of the issue here, okay, fine, he's working on something from Ridgecrest to,
Winter. It just it's not really the whole
yeah.
project, but yeah.
But to get all the way to Ellis Park, you go out of the village.
Yeah.
So that complicates it. It's not just a village, it becomes more than a village project.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, the next one was the bike parking code amendment. And see, I assigned the lead as Gary, because we kind of discussed that the last meeting, that's who would be the lead. And put the next steps here, research and report to PC first, create the draft code language, communicate with village council and the public, prepare application and take to public hearing.
Yeah, I could comment real briefly on that. Meg and I have been working on it initially. There's some reference material that's applicable, and we're just trying to figure out how to make an outline that's applicable for our application, and it'll take a little time. There's actually many more cases in which you need to apply for. It's sort of like car parking. There's many, many more locations that you have to identify.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
The how-to guide, so develop a how-to guide for accessory dwelling units for interested parties. Aside myself and the Planning Commission for this one, and after the last meeting, I started thinking more about it, and I already have like a lot of this information available to me, and I have template emails that I send out when I have the same question. I get a lot. I use the same kind of code sections and links and everything, and then I actually spoke with Ben a little bit, because he has graphic design skills and such, and I don't think this one's going to be as complicated as we might have thought it would be. I think we could do something really pretty quickly. I did put a deadline of March 2024, just to give us some time to bring it back. Like my whole kind of envisioning of it is that it would be something we could put on our website, but also share with people, that has links in it, that's really easy to understand. And actually, Ben sent me something, he didn't take him very long to put together something I think that's fabulous. He thinks it's not, he's just a rough draft or something, but it's way better than I could have done, so, yeah. Yeah, so we're moving forward on that one. Then this next one, I think, will be a little bit, this is the reviewing of the existing code to see how our current code maybe adds cost to housing development, and see how we can maybe make it a little bit more friendly for infill projects and density specific. And I mean, this one I could definitely use feedback on how the approach for it, because we're going to have to interact with the public. And I put multiple steps. I put Meg to provide an overview of the existing code to the Planning Commission at some point, and that would be the first step, in my opinion, is to outline what we currently have in our code and where the barriers may be. And then take it, potentially set up focus groups with various stakeholders. I know there's a lot of people interested in this one.
Yes.
I've already had people reaching out to me about it,
Great.
from members of the public, and then brainstorm with you guys. I actually, that first step and the second step, I thought maybe we could do by the end of next year, calendar year.
Great.
But, I mean, these are just estimates. Okay. And then community reinvestment area. I just went on the website real quick for the Ohio Development Department? Yeah, Ohio Department of Development, and learned a little bit about it. I need to do a little bit more research in making sure that we could qualify for it, but this is basically supposed to be for property that we've been trying to get to develop for quite a little bit of time. Maybe have some existing dilapidated properties, vacant existing structures that we maybe want to fix up, at least from what I could read. But I want to dive into it a little bit more. That would be the first step for me, is researching that. But I assigned the housing committee, and I put on here that we need to coordinate with the housing committee, really to align with what they're doing.
Okay, and I think that I remember Josue was interested in this. possibly for the glass farm.
That's right, yeah, yeah. I can add, oh, no, it's in there, okay, good. Including the glass farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you get with this? Is there some grant money available?
It's a tax break for
A tax break?
for X number of years, I guess.
Yes.
The community would decide.
A state tax break or a local tax break?
I think it's the local, that's a good
Local.
question. I believe it's local, but
Yeah.
I can find out more. Or with the housing committee, if,
Yeah.
Okay.
and then now we're back to the property maintenance code.
Okay.
Yeah, it was maybe just to flush out, like, kind of my initial thoughts on what I was thinking the steps would be. I did assign it to me, but I can report back to the planning commission. I've run code enforcement departments, divisions before, at 2 other agencies, and think I have a pretty good handle on how to work with people in the way that you're saying, which is in a proactive manner that offers resources. But like, so the first step I was thinking was the standard operating procedure internally. And as part of that, I will be communicating with the head of this group that you guys are talking about, just to let her know like what our process is and how to interact with us. Because we have a process internally, but from what I can tell, it hasn't been written out. And I just to make sure we're all on the same page, I feel like that. And I could bring this, like I've worked with bodies before that, they want to see the standard operating procedures. So I'm fine with sharing those with you guys if that's something you want to be at all that level. But, so do you think you guys want to be involved at that level where you see the steps of how we're doing it? I don't know.
I'm baffled as to how you're going to,
Do all this?
how do you even know? How do you even know? I mean, you could maybe say, well, that house looks like it's falling apart, the porch is
Oh, well,
all right. I
that's-
mean, how are you
that's
even
true. That's-
identifying properties?
Well, this would be only, sorry, backing up, maybe I jumped to it only being complaint-driven. That's always how I've been.
Yeah.
I've always, with the other 2 places I've worked, it was complaint-driven only. So that's why, so we receive a complaint and we investigate it, and then we determine if it's in compliance with the code. And we kind of have that already because we have that link on our website where it comes in, and we have someone submitting us lots of them already to us. So it would just be like putting it in one place and tracking it in this. That's the way I look at it. But
Yeah. See, this can be more complicated than we're all realizing, because what I'm thinking about, we were talking about, you want to just apply it to safety stuff, but I keep writing myself little notes, but there's no shortage of residences that inside the house have lead paint, no radon mitigation, asbestos, and those are all really well-established safety hazards, but they're in private residences, So you can't just simply say, oh, we're going to go after safety issues, because there's some severe safety issues that we know exist, but it's not practical for many reasons to go after, these 3, for example.
It seems so terrifyingly white upper middle class to me. It kind of reeks of you're going to live the way that I think you should live, or else I'm going to tell you how to make it the way it should be.
Yeah.
Unless it's really geared towards, an egregious safety issue that needs to be mitigated. So I don't know how that gets figured out, but when I read it, I get the willies.
Well, we'll assume Meg, since she has a lot of experience with it, can
shouldn't
figure it
have
out. But I like the idea that it's complaint-driven, because I believe that probably most communities, it is complaint-driven. And
Is there like grant money or something like, could this be like a sort of a carrot-driven thing where we can say, if there was money available to help you fix up your house or get rid of your lead paint or whatever, that we can, try and get people to improve and maintain their houses by saying, hey, this is an opportunity, not like we're going to punish you for it.
well, Home Inc. this year got
Yeah.
$150,000, and they have used it for, I think they said 7 homes for you know, the people have things that need to be done, and they will apply for money again next year.
Well, and there is overlap with, like, whatever's going on with the NIC contract to some degree, and which was related specifically to building code safety. So whatever their authority is there in the state law to regulate internally building, which usually escalates to the point of pretty severe safety issues to be able to do anything about it. I think I'll push the time frame out maybe a little bit more and to like put more in here about exploring what other agencies are doing.
Sure.
And then, so that way it aligns more, maybe I could look at what some nearby jurisdictions are doing.
Communities, yes.
Yeah. And then we could, it'll also give us time to see what's happening with council and the NIC contract a little bit. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay. Then we're to develop apartments.
Develop apartments, Scott's going to do that.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll have it done by the end of the year.
November 4th.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, so basically I put this one as, we need the housing committee. It kind of goes along with everything that, and we're going to have to prioritize it and work with the housing committee to figure out what the next steps would be.
Great.
This one is request for proposal for developers to develop at the Glass Farm site. I put this also, the housing committee. I need to kind of figure out what prior work has been done already, if any. I feel like it was said that there was, and I'm not sure. And then, so housing committee. Support the efforts of Yellow Springs, Home Inc., put relationship building, and I think over this next year, this will flesh out a little bit more, just based on my understanding from the meeting I was just attended. They have a lot going on, so I think we'll be able to support them in other ways, but it'll just be ongoing. I put pause, it would be good to hear about this, continue to work with the YS Chamber on marketing prospective residents. That's actually in the comp plan policy. It says, continue to work with the YS Chamber of Commerce to market the village to prospective residents. So I put pause on that.
Okay.
Develop an economic development plan strategy. I paused that too, but it's put to reconsider again in next year. Support existing businesses and actively recruit strategic businesses that diversify the economic base. I would like to anyways, so it just goes in line with what I would think I should be doing as my job, is to reach out to the existing businesses and listen to their current concerns. And I thought what I could do is just kind of gather them up over a couple months and then bring them back here. Because if it's things that's going to require a lot more work, I would bring it back here and gather it up. But if it's just quick things I could do to make things easier for them, I would just do it right away.
Sure.
On that one, I wonder if it makes sense to add in a note that this is related to what the Yellow Springs Development Corps
Yes.
does, that you should at least identify working with them.
Oh, they do this too?
Well,
Oh, I don't want to step on their toes.
no,
just give it to
them.
I don't think you're stepping on it.
Okay.
I think what you're talking about is something different. They're looking at trying to attract business to the community.
Well, that's,
But this is, actively recruit strategic businesses that blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah, that's the one
There's some
pause.
related goals.
yeah, that's the
that
whole
they have.
slide deck thing that came, that's the conversations that's been happening with YSDC and
But I
Yeah.
think that's
And
good to
council.
add them to.
But yeah, but you just-
For you to meet with
Okay.
them.
Makes it work with
Yeah.
with YSDC as appropriate.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Ensure Yellow Springs is responsive and friendly to the needs of local businesses, kind of the same thing. I'll be reaching out to them and pulling things together. If there's anything bigger that they would need from us, I'll work with YSDC and the Planning Commission.
Great.
Update the park master plan, I put to reconsider in 2025.
Great.
And then continue to support TLT conservation efforts outside the urban service boundary. In the near-term development pressures, it talks about how, we're getting more development pressure. continue to support farmland preservation and conservation efforts, particularly in the northwest quadrants. I don't know why else someone's so dry mouth, sorry. So this one, I could use input too, like what I put on here, for what you think. I put focus on relationship building, but what I think could be really helpful right away with just letting everyone be more aware of it, because when I first started, it was kind of hard to find out where all those properties were. Remember on the comp plan map, I pulled them up, and I like to make that easier to find on our
Okay.
website.
The ones that have the easements, or
Yeah.
not easements, have the conservation.
Right.
Is it
Conservation
easement?
easements,
Yeah,
yes, it
okay.
is. And I did meet with Michelle, and she said it's in perpetuity. I mean, they're like that forever. So,
Yes.
I mean, I think we need to be upfront and transparent about our, the reality of it.
Yes.
And it make it a little bit easier to find the map. And then I don't know what your thoughts were on, I was thinking of talking to her, like, it seems like maybe they might have, but they need any support, like whoever owns the property underlying these conservation easements, if they need any support from us, since it is kind of an integral part of a comprehensive plan. I don't know what it would be. I mean, I've never heard from any one of them. I don't know if maybe Michelle would probably know.
No, I mean, it
No.
benefits them as far as taxes go. It's kind of a win-win.
It doesn't like hold them in place
They're done. They
to,
get paid to do that.
They get a substantial amount of money
Yeah.
and a tax break for doing these
Okay.
easements. They get.
it's not like they're held down by it.
No,
or-
no,
it's
they
absolutely
want this.
voluntary, yeah.
They want to preserve the.
Okay.
But I think talking to Michelle would be good, because she can certainly share that.
Yeah,
You know, with
in
you.
more details.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it would be nice to have a map showing us all those properties.
Gavin, did you want to say something? Are we
Well,
going to, should we slow down or go back to
no,
something?
I think I'm just struggling with like sort of the scope here. Like, it's like, is this the list of the things that would guide your sort of like work planning or your personal work? And then if so, like, because some of these things feel like they were on here from the original comprehensive plan.
They
And then
are.
other things have been added more recently, right?
Just two, yeah, two were added based on the planning commission direction at the last meeting.
Okay.
The bike parking.
Okay. So like the RFP for Glass Farm, that's been on there since the original plan?
No.
Oh, yeah, it's in there, yeah.
Has it been?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
original?
Okay.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
must have thought about that.
A
but
long time ago, yeah. I was
Yeah.
very, very,
My word.
Okay.
I did not want to necessarily bring all these topics up. I was going off the
Right, right.
comprehensive plan, and
So then this TLT thing, is this new, is this one new?
No,
That's the other new
that's-
one? That's all from the original plan?
yep.
Okay. I think I'm just trying to figure out which of these things are like things that need direction from like a prioritization from this body, which of these things need prioritization from council, which of these things our prioritization from staff, like that start with staff. I think it's a lot to wrap your head around. I mean, so for example, just my first gut reaction is like, the apartments thing feels like a really big, complex project. And my personal, so Gary, I swear I'm not picking on you, just you're sitting right next to me, so I'm thinking about it. So like the bike parking thing, there's a part of me that's like, and it feels like when I look at, and that for anybody who wasn't at the meeting, the last meeting, we had this continue, stop, start, pause list, Village is looking at. It kind of feels to me like we just have this whole just massive ball of projects, just tons of possible projects. And then I get nervous that the quality of any one project is hurt by the fact that there's always something over here that, ooh, shiny penny, let's go over there. So my first gut reaction is like, there's a bunch of these things, to prioritize them, to say, hey, which of these is the thing? And one of them might take all of our time. In fact, developing apartments, for example, might be impossible for us to have the staff capacity for currently, and we might to make it possible, and therefore we might need to figure out how to budget for it. Anyway, I'm just letting you know how I respond to this, where I'm like, it's so many things, and how do we prioritize them, and whose role is it to do it?
So I feel like that's
Well-
actually what I'm trying to do, by
Okay.
You are.
creating this.
So-
and
Okay.
Well,
doing
and with the
this.
apartments thing, especially with us losing 8 apartments in the fire, and it's just me, with my gut feeling, because I ran out of Hawthorne, honestly, just my gut, I don't think that building's coming back. If they prove me wrong, I would love to see it. So it kind of does put a little urgency into, maybe if we can get an apartment complex, because we took it as part of our overall
Right.
plan to do this
And it-
anyway, is to help with affordable housing.
This is also like a
But
representative
it's,
of.
yeah, you're right, it's going to take some time, yeah, it's going to take some work and effort to
Yeah.
get the right thing done. But-
Okay.
But that's why I put it in the housing committee.
Yes.
And also, like, this is also me showing the commission that I heard you at the last meeting. It's a reflection of what I heard so that you know that as well. But I would do something very similar like this with the council projects if I knew about all of them at all, but I don't. I don't.
No, and it's just, like, when I said
I
at the last
would-
meeting, and like, you know, Sue said, the housing commissions, that's like right on top of their list, you know, so it's definitely something working with, like all this stuff, and that's just the nature of the beast, I see, you know. But
okay.
I do like this because of actually having it in front of me. It gives me more opportunity, even when I'm not here, to like look over and like, you know, where would I want to go? And just like each member we would do, and hopefully, you know, at some point, we're all coming together, like, going, well, if we agree on 3 of these, like, right away, that might be the direction we take. Or we hear from council, like, we need to go this direction. Will you all look into that? You know, something like that, you know?
Okay, we've got one more to go, so let's
Yeah.
Let's rock it.
finish with one last page.
And I will say, like, I did talk with Johnny about, I mean, staff, when you say staff, like, staff being on board, there's not anyone, it's Judy, me, Johnny, and Amy. I mean, there's not many other staff to be on board with this. It's me doing this, and Judy and Johnny. And when I go back to my office after these meetings, I talk to everyone, and I tell them, and I brainstorm about how we can accomplish these things, like with the ADU guide. Like, that's with Ben, I mean, that's how we do things, but it's just a couple of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's also the case, I just want to mention that some of these projects, you know, you can sort of prioritize them in some manner, but some of the projects require either some funding or a great deal of funding that impacts, you know, your highest priority project conceivably could be the hardest to accomplish because of the funding. And then a lower priority project might require no funding, and most of the work would be done by someone who's not on the staff. So that one will come through. So you got to take that in context. I don't know how you put that on the spreadsheet, but
Okay.
that's something to keep in mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will.
Yeah.
The historic district overlay, is this is from the comprehensive, again, these are all from the comprehensive plan, every single one. It actually says in there, establishing a local historic district overlay. Is this something we should reconsider in 2025?
I think we should consider in 2025, because when Josue was there, one of the things he said was that that can really cause housing it to be much more expensive.
Yeah.
And so I don't think at this point, I think all of us, when he said that, we sort of went, oh, okay. Because at first I thought, oh, that sounds like a great idea, and then when I heard that, I thought, no, I don't think that is a great idea at this time. I think we should consider it at a later point.
Well, and can I just throw this in here? We have you all to uphold a standard for things not looking too weird and out there when something comes into a historical area, like the downtown area or whatever. Frankly, I would love it if you just took this off of here. It's super expensive, and then it dictates to planning commission. Basically, you put in a historic district, someone comes in with their plan, and then you get to say, well, hold up.
Yeah.
It can only be this way, and this way, which I think hobbles planning commission and development in a way that you don't necessarily want. You're free to hobble it in terms of look.
But I thought we couldn't
but-
hobble it. I thought that was the whole thing. Like when we looked at the deal, the Earth Rose building, wasn't it like?
Because we didn't have this
We
in
didn't-
place. If we added this.
I thought the whole thing was that we couldn't say anything about what it looked like.
You could have, had you had a lot of people coming to the meeting and saying, oh, no way, I don't want my downtown looking like that. That's not what you had.
Yeah, right.
You had a couple of letters, literally a couple of letters, and so it didn't,
So wait, hold on. What is it? So where is the threshold? I thought we asked, do we have the purview to make changes based on design. And I thought the answer was,
I think there is something
No.
in there about like keeping
No.
things in character with the
Yes.
neighborhood,
Yes.
stuff like that. So, I mean, so that is, there isn't a standard for downtown, but if they had come in and they said, oh, well, do we want to build a yurt there, or we want to
I thought we asked
You know?
explicitly, do we have any say over the design, what it looks like? And the answer was no.
Right,
So the
so-
idea that we could have 2 people write and that was not enough, but that we could have 20 people write and then it would be enough to make
No.
a change?
No, I don't think that the answer was you don't have any purview.
Well, you go back and look at it. That was the only question we were asking.
Not, it's substantially in keeping with the surrounding buildings and neighborhoods.
Yes.
And nobody was complaining about the way it looked. People were complaining about that there were going to be people walking up Keith's Alley from the back.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
past. This is for,
Yeah.
that's the past. I wasn't here.
Yeah. So let's continue on this so we can get this done.
Yeah.
We'll keep that there forever then.
And so, well, then why don't we put along there, no action initiated, and consider removing this?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, the next one is just continue to recognize and adhere to the urban service boundary growth limits. Yes, we will do that. It's nice to have it in writing. And then I always thought we could make some website enhancements to make it a little bit clearer where it is, because I don't think, continue to invest in solar infrastructure. This is, again, the chapter for public facilities and utilities. I paused that one. And then just added to this list from the comprehensive plan, the study of the electrical system and complete recommended strategies. I thought, as I get information related to those 2 things, I would just report back to the planning commission so we're in the loop. Not really anything that I would do.
By the way, there's an electric study coming to council, 30-minute report next meeting. So you'll get a report back, but also if you want to tune into that portion of the meeting, that's fairly comprehensive look at what is capacity,
And there, that's
what
an
needs to happen
example.
with
I could let you
capacity.
guys know about
That's
that.
at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the next one, yeah. That's it.
Okay.
It was very good.
I mean, these don't have to be final decisions. If anyone has like really burning thoughts after, they're like, or questions, like I'm happy to sit down with you and go through it in more detail. It's a lot. I could have given the better overview, I will admit to that.
I think this
just
is-
jumped
No,
right
this is a
in.
good roadmap. I
I
like
think
this.
this is very good, and as Scott said, I think this is something we can all understand, look at it, follow it.
I like the fact I can actually read it without my glasses.
Yes.
High bar, high bar.
Gavin had asked some questions about, do we have things that we need to request some funding for in the budgeting process?
Yeah.
I
Right.
might
Good.
throw out there that it wouldn't be a bad idea for planning commission to request, I'm throwing something out, but maybe $500 for trainings. If any of you think you may have time to do some of the trainings that are available, that gives back. You come back with a greater body of knowledge. So we could drop some money in specifically for y'all to do trainings, and then maybe a little bit for printing that brochure kind of deal. Gavin, I don't know if you had other things.
Well, I mean, the big one, of course, is development. Is like, if we want to pursue development, then we're probably going to need to spend money on development. So I guess it's just where does that conversation happen? So like, right now, we just, for instance, there's an apartments thing in here, there's the thing about Glass Farm, but from my perspective, we do all this talking about housing, there's not a line item for, and I know that there have been dollars used from, I don't know, what's that fund that Josue talked about using for the planning person,
Oh, professional services?
yeah, so there's some little buckets that get pulled from, I know, which is fine. But I guess I'm looking at, like, if we're talking about, obviously, Glass Farm, for example, would be it's a massive project. Having some resources in the budget to be able to start putting toward that. So I don't know where that goes.
That might be a good idea. I think what you'd expect is, like if you put out a request for proposals, you're going to expect the developer to be looking at and finding sources of funding, because that's usually part of what the job of the developer is. If they're applying for like housing tax credits, they're the ones that are going to be doing that, or working with a nonprofit to do that.
I wanted to remind everybody, sort of in this context, we talk about Glass Farm, but relatively recently now, Antioch College now is putting on the market some land as well, as land that be prime location for development, as well as a couple buildings that would be prime locations for reuse, possibly for some of the housing type
Yeah.
of things we're talking about. And we got to keep that in mind. And we may or may not have all the zoning codes in place that we want to facilitate some of that activity. Maybe we do, maybe we don't.
We definitely could have made it easier had we gotten ahead of the curveball, but I've looked into it, I would say, and there's a way to get there for residential.
Because we changed some that were sold, and just recently they've sold a couple of lots. Now they have the buildings, a couple buildings
Yeah.
that are for sale, but I know they were under education or something. But the lots, there were like 3 lots, I can't remember if it was.
And well,
North High or
multifamily is a conditional use in the E1.
something. Okay.
So there is a path forward. They'd have to
Yeah.
go through a public hearing. But, and like developers typically don't like having that extra step. I mean, so ideally it would be not a conditional use, it would be permitted outright. But, there still is a way to do it.
Yeah.
But again, you can do pocket neighborhood.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, if we're talking about funds and like for training or that for this, I think that's a good idea. I would say $1,000.
Okay, just for,
And maybe then to tell council, like Gavin would like to see some money for housing development.
well, I think I'd like to see this changed slightly. The RFP for Glass Farm should be an RFP for any properties identified by the Housing Committee as suitable for apartments, because we've got at least 3. And the Housing Committee hasn't gotten that far along in the process yet, but I think
Right.
if Planning Commission is ready to back up whatever
Housing committee comes
Housing
up with.
Committee comes back with and say, yes, we'd like to
Yeah.
support an RFP for
And like,
wherever that is.
Gavin, the development are all basically funneled to the housing committee now. Like basically what I did, I funneled all of them. So, and I kind of thought that same thing, like maybe we shouldn't be so specific. Maybe it shouldn't just be Glass Farm. But so the only unfortunate thing about it is that the housing committee were on pause till November and they need the budget ask right now. And so that's the kind of fuzzy, no?
But RFP, so that's money for ads. We develop the RFP.
We don't have to make something real fancy and flashy. I
No,
guess
I
Ben
mean,
could
how'd
do
it go?
that for us.
You
Fancy and flashy.
may want to say like 5,000 or something to cover, those
So-
things.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
if that
point.
is develop identified, sites identified by Housing Committee.
Yeah. I mean, the advantage of the Glass Farm is the village already owns it, so,
But they do own the other properties that,
The other properties too.
yeah.
okay.
I guess the thing about, I'm disinclined to like start figuring out how to wordsmith this and more like, so I agree with this idea of like, let's make it about a wider range than just Glass Farm. But I think that what I'm struggling with is like, do we want to wordsmith every one of them? I don't think so. I think the basic idea is like, this is giving, am I understanding this correctly, Maggie? This is saying, these are the general buckets. These are the general directions. Then if something like the Antioch thing comes along, just because it's not written on this list doesn't mean that you couldn't
Right.
spend time on it. This is just meant as like a, hey, let's do a review on where we've been. This is close. And
Yeah.
it gives us a direction of the things to look at, as opposed to like, these are the exact to-do items and that we need to order them, and then these are the things.
Well,
It's a guide. Because if it's specifically, then I guess I want to drill down on it. Then I want to order them. Then I want to look at the words to see, are these actually the words that make sense today?
That one
How does
that
it fit
you-
within the context of all the things that aren't written down here, right? Because you do all kinds of things that aren't written on here.
oh, this is just like my side job, yeah.
Totally.
This is just my side job. No, I mean, I've taken that into consideration, but I hesitate, the reason I would hesitate to change the language of any of these is because they're from the comprehensive plan, and I was very careful to make sure it exactly matched what was in the comprehensive plan, and so, but I think, like, the authority is with the Housing Committee and Planning Commission to refine that Glass Farm one, like, to be more broad, through that body. We don't necessarily have to change that language.
I mean,
These are policies that are guiding policy statements, but I don't think we'd want to change the comp plan, language, I guess. So,
I agree.
Well, village-owned properties is what I would change that to, because I think that at the time the comp plan was being developed, there were at least 2 properties that had not yet been identified as available as housing opportunities that are village-owned. That simply wasn't information that was known at the time. So,
Yeah.
I do think, since that's information
And the
you've
housing
got-
committee has the authority to do that, don't you think? Or do we have to put that in writing somewhere, that the housing committee has the authority to do that? I feel like they could. Not change the language specifically, but
Yes,
look
but-
at other properties.
Yes, this is pulled from the comp plan, but your goals are your goals. You can make your goals whatever you want them to be. It doesn't have to, yes, it should generally follow the comprehensive plan, but if things change and they morph and they grow, and you can certainly, I think, change the language. You're planning commission, it's your job to.
Okay, I think that we at least have a guide. Meg has a guide. We've gone over it. Do we have any,
Well, and this is the first time we've done this,
Yeah.
so we can just try it out, and if it ends up being a problem, we can just revise and continue to move forward. All right?
One thought might be to just put another column that's basically like, well, you have, so wait, you have it, the comp plan, you have the N next to the only ones that aren't in the comp plan, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's, and then, so to your point, if you want to keep the integrity of the terminology so that you can always say, these are right in line, well, then you can just put that in the notes section.
Yeah. Or we could
Anyway,
even add another one.
I see where you're going.
Specifically with what you're saying. We could, like, you guys added, Gary, and you added one for bike parking, so we could even come up with another one that said, more than just Glass Farm RFP. I can't remember the exact language.
I think maybe too, Gavin, if you take this info back to housing committee to say, planning commission's backing this apartment housing, village-owned land stuff, if we want to give them some tasks or some things to help out our position, go for it, and
Okay, so can I just from other members, is there, because I think we do have this little thing to figure out with the housing committee being closed and then the budget thing. I think functionally what'll probably end up happening is I'll just bring it up and say, there is an interest. So am I hearing that there is an interest in the essentially housing development, project development? There may be some interest in resources from this group. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so regardless of whether this is one of these things that checks lots of boxes. It's planning, it's housing, it's council, but this group, I can say, would feels supportive of that,
Yes.
some request. Okay, that's good enough for now, I think.
Okay, moving on. We're going to move off this then, if everybody is okay with that. Do we have any new business? Okay, do we have any agenda planning? Do we have anything planned for our next meeting?
Gosh, I do have, like 4 or 5 different people I'm working with for submittal of an application for planning commission, but they're not ready yet.
But they're not ready, so they won't be coming to our next meeting.
we've got, another week? Do we have
I don't think they're that close.
okay.
But at the same time, someone could just drop by tomorrow and I wouldn't, I have no idea, so.
Okay. If we don't have anything, do we have a meeting then?
Wow. These are big questions. Well, let us have another week. And, do you think, Judy?
To see if anything,
Yeah, because we've never not had something other than our August meeting.
But we had the August meeting.
Yeah, and we had it on goals. But for a regular meeting, if we don't have any business, I don't see the point in meeting.
I highly support that since we have 3 budget meetings added to our
Yeah.
other calendar.
So why don't we leave it at that we will, they will let us know if we're
In
going to
about
have
a
a
week if
meeting.
we haven't, that sounds good to me.
Yep, okay.
Great.
Are you sure you don't want to talk more about this project list. I know you do.
I would like to move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.